Captain Amanda Hayes stood motionless on the bridge of the HSS Defiant, her steel blue eyes fixed on the tactical display. 50 Scythar warships surrounded her vessel, their crystalline hulls gleaming like predatory teeth in the light of a distant sun. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, broken only by the soft beeping of instruments and the occasional whispered status report. "Status on the quantum shields," Hayes asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of their situation. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez glanced up from his station. "Holding at 87%, Captain. The modifications are working better than expected, but we won't survive concentrated fire from all of them." Hayes nodded, studying the Imperial formation. The Scythar ships had arranged themselves in a classic encirclement pattern, their massive dreadnoughts positioned at strategic intervals. It was textbook space warfare, and that was their first mistake. Humans had long since learned that textbook strategies got you killed. "Engineering, how's our special project coming along?" Hayes asked through the ship's comm. Chief Engineer Diana Wells' voice crackled back. "The core modifications are holding stable, Captain. But if we push it too hard, we might tear ourselves apart before the enemy gets the chance." A message flashed across the main view screen. The Scythar demanding their immediate surrender. Hayes allowed herself a small smile. The Empire had conquered 12 species through overwhelming force and fear, but they'd never encountered humans before. They didn't understand that backing humans into a corner was like trying to trap a wounded wolf, dangerous and often fatal for the hunter. Tactical. Analyze their formation. "Find me a weak point," Hayes ordered, her fingers drumming lightly on the armrest of her command chair. Lieutenant Sarah Chen's hands flew across her console. "Their port flank is slightly weaker. Looks like their number 3 dreadnought is having power fluctuations. Minimal, but it's there. Helm, bring us about. Face the empty sector behind us, but keep that dreadnought in our firing arc." Hayes stood, walking to the tactical display for a closer look. "Communications, are they still broadcasting?" "Yes, Captain," replied Communications Officer James Wright. "They're getting increasingly agitated by our lack of response. The latest message threatens to, and I quote, make an example of us across 1,000 worlds." The bridge crew shared knowing looks. The Empire's threats were as predictable as their tactics. Hayes studied the spatial readings of the seemingly empty sector behind them. Everything hinged on the enemy not realizing what they were actually defending. "Status of the quantum beacon," Hayes asked quietly. "Still undetected," Rodriguez confirmed. "The Imperial ships are scanning us, not the space around us." Classic tunnel vision. Hayes returned to her chair, her movement deliberate and calm. She drilled her crew for situations like this, though none of them had expected to face an entire Imperial fleet. The Defiant was an exploration vessel, recently modified for combat, but it wasn't meant to fight wars. Then again, humanity's greatest victories often came from people doing what wasn't meant to be done. "All hands," Hayes keyed the ship-wide comm. "This is the captain. You all know what we're fighting for. The Narians are counting on us, even if they don't know it yet. We're outnumbered 50-1. Our ship is untested in major combat, and our survival chances are minimal." She paused, letting her words sink in. "In other words, it's a fair fight." A chorus of determined chuckles echoed through the comm system. Hayes smiled. Gallows humor was another human trait the Empire wouldn't understand. "Engineering. Divert power to the forward shields. Helm, prepare for emergency maneuvers on my mark. Tactical, target that weakened Dreadnought's power grid. We're about to show the Empire why you should never corner a human ship." The tension on the bridge was electric as the crew prepared for what could be their final stand. But there was no fear in their movements, no hesitation in their actions. They were defending something greater than themselves, and that made them dangerous in ways the Empire couldn't comprehend. Hayes watched as the Imperial ships tightened their formation, preparing to close the trap. Little did they know, they were the ones being trapped. The real question wasn't whether the Defiant would survive. It was how many Imperial ships they'd take with them before this was over. "All stations," Hayes commanded, her voice carrying the weight of Earth's first major encounter with the Empire. "Battle stations. Let's show them why this will be the galaxy's greatest mistake." 4 days earlier, the Defiant drifted silently through the outer edges of the Narration system, its long-range scanners painting a breathtaking picture of twin crimson suns casting their light across crystalline cities. Captain Hayes stood at the observation window, watching the pre-FTL civilization going about their lives, completely unaware of the darkness approaching their world. "Captain, you need to see this." Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice cut through her contemplation. His usual easygoing demeanor had vanished, replaced by tight-lipped concern. The tactical display told the story. A massive fleet of Imperial harvester ships was approaching the system, their energy signatures unmistakable. Hayes had studied enough reports to know what came next: systematic conquest, enslavement, and the stripping of resources until nothing remained but another broken world in the Empire's wake. "How long until they arrive?" Hayes asked, already calculating possibilities in her head. 3 days at their current speed. Rodriguez pulled up additional data. "They're running with minimal stealth protocols. They don't expect any resistance here." Chief Engineer Wells spoke up from her station, her voice grim. "We've got the experimental quantum shields, Captain, but we're still just one ship. Even with the modifications, we can't take on an Imperial fleet." Hayes walked to the center of the bridge, studying the holographic display of the Narration homeworld. The civilization below had achieved roughly 21st century Earth technology. Their cities gleamed like jewels, their population of 8 billion living in relative peace. They had no idea they were about to become the 13th species conquered by the Cathar Empire. "Show me the harvester fleet's composition," Hayes ordered. The display shifted, showing 47 warships and 3 massive harvester vessels. The harvesters were the key. Industrial-scale ships designed to strip-mine entire planets, regardless of whether those planets were inhabited. This Cathar didn't believe in leaving resources untapped, even if those resources were people. "We could send a warning back to Earth," suggested Communications Officer Wright. "The fleet might arrive in time to save some of them." Hayes shook her head. "The Imperial fleet will be here in 3 days. The nearest Earth forces are 2 weeks out at maximum speed. The Narratians would be long gone by then." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They all knew the statistics. Of the 12 species the Empire had harvested, none had survived with more than 10% of their population intact. The rest were scattered across Imperial space as slaves, their cultures and histories erased. "What about the quantum beacon?" Lieutenant Chen asked quietly. "The one we were supposed to place at the system's edge." Hayes turned to her tactical officer, seeing the same thought process reflected in her eyes. The quantum beacon was designed to create an instantaneous communication link back to Earth, capable of transmitting massive amounts of data through entangled particles. It was supposed to be the first step in expanding human influence into this sector. "If we could get the beacon operational," Chen continued, "we could at least ensure Earth sees what happens here. Maybe even transmit tactical data about the Imperial fleet." Hayes walked to her command chair, her decision already forming. "Wells, if we rerouted power from the beacon through our FTL core, could we create a weapon?" The chief engineer's eyes widened. "It's never been tried, Captain. The power requirements alone would be astronomical. We'd be risking a core breach." "But could it work?" Wells ran her hands through her short red hair, already making calculations. "Maybe. We'd have to modify the core on the fly, and there's no guarantee we'd survive using it." Hayes looked around at her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt. They had all signed up to explore the galaxy, to make first contact with new civilizations. Instead, they were about to attempt something that no human ship had ever done: stand alone against an Imperial fleet. "I won't order anyone to stay," Hayes announced. "This isn't our fight, and our standing orders are to avoid Imperial contact where possible. If we do this, We're likely signing our own death warrant." One by one, her crews straightened at their stations. No one moved toward the escape pods. No one even suggested retreat. "The Narians don't have a chance without us," Rodriguez said, speaking for all of them. "And humans don't abandon people in need." Hayes nodded, pride swelling in her chest. "Then let's get to work. We've got 3 days to turn an exploration vessel into something that can challenge an empire. Wells, start those core modifications. Chen, plot us an intercept course." The crew sprang into action, their movements purposeful and determined. They had chosen to stand against impossible odds, to defend a species that would never even know they existed. It was, Hayes reflected, perhaps the most human decision they could make. The HSS Defiant raced through hyperspace, its modified engines straining against physics itself. Deep in engineering, Chief Wells stood surrounded by holographic diagrams of the FTL core, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of quantum readouts. Around her, her engineering team worked with desperate efficiency, knowing each second counted. "The power coupling won't hold," Lieutenant Park warned, his hands deep in the core's auxiliary systems. "We're pushing way beyond safety limits." Wells wiped sweat from her forehead, leaving a streak of grease. Safety limits were written by people who never had to fight an Imperial fleet. Reroute power through the secondary grid. Above them, the core hummed with an increasingly unstable frequency. They'd stripped away dozens of safety protocols, pushing the experimental technology far beyond its intended parameters. The ship's AI constantly updated their survival probabilities, each calculation lower than the last. On the bridge, Captain Hayes studied the tactical projections. The Imperial fleet was gaining, their superior engines slowly closing the distance. "Time to intercept?" she asked. 6 hours at current speed, Rodriguez reported. "They're launching long-range probes to track our energy signature." Hayes nodded, watching the pursuit pattern develop. The Empire was being methodical, treating them like any other prey they'd hunted down. That was good. It meant they hadn't realized what the humans were planning. "Engineering, status report," she called through the comm. Wells' voice came back strained but determined. "We've managed to integrate the quantum beacon systems with the core. The power output is unprecedented. The problem is controlling it." "Explain." "The quantum beacon was designed to transmit data through artificial wormholes, smaller than an atom. We're trying to scale that up to weapon size. If it works, we could theoretically create localized ruptures in spacetime." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "And if it doesn't work?" "We'll tear ourselves apart at the atomic level." Wells paused. "But hey, at least we won't have to worry about the Empire anymore." Dark humor, humanity's shield against fear. Hayes allowed herself a small smile before returning to the tactical display. "How long until the weapon is ready?" 3 hours, minimum. We're having to rebuild the containment systems from scratch. Park's team is converting our sensor arrays into quantum stabilizers." A warning klaxon blared through the ship. Lieutenant Chen's hands flew across her tactical station. "Captain, they're powering up their main weapons. Long-range artillery units moving into formation." "Evasive maneuvers," Hayes ordered. "Rodriguez, divert power to aft shields." The Defiant swerved as green energy beams lanced through space where they'd been moments before. The Imperial ships were still too far for accurate fire, but they were sending a message: surrender or die. "Engineering, we may not have 3 hours," Hayes warned. "Working as fast as we can, Captain," Wells replied, her voice nearly drowned out by the sound of sparking electronics. "The quantum matrices are highly unstable. One wrong calculation and—" An explosion rocked the engineering deck. Through the comm came the sound of fire suppression systems activating. "Wells? Report." For a moment, only static answered. Then, "We're okay. Containment field overloaded, but we contained the breach. Park's hands are pretty burned, but he says he can keep working." Hayes gripped her command chair as another barrage of Imperial fire rocked the ship. They were running out of time and options. The Empire's weapons were getting closer with each volley. All hands, Hayes broadcast ship-wide. This is the captain. I know you're all giving everything you've got, but I need more. The Narians are counting on us. Earth is counting on us. The Empire thinks they're hunting down a single ship, but we're about to show them why that was their greatest mistake. Throughout the ship, her crew responded with renewed determination. In engineering, Wells and her team pushed harder, ignoring fatigue and injury. On the bridge, tactical and navigation worked in perfect sync, keeping them just ahead of the Imperial weapons. New contact, Chen called out. Another Imperial squadron joining the pursuit. 15 more ships. Hayes watched the tactical display update, showing the new threats. The Empire was committing serious forces now, determined to make an example of the lone human vessel that dared to defy them. Time to weapons completion, she asked engineering. Wells' voice was grim but determined. 2 hours, 40 minutes, if we survive that long. Hayes watched as more Imperial ships appeared on their scopes. We'll survive. Humans always find a way. Even if we have to rewrite the laws of physics to do it. The Defiant plunged deeper into space, its crew racing against time to complete a weapon that might save a civilization, or destroy them all in the attempt. Imperial Admiral Tizark stood on his command deck, his scaled skin reflecting the glow of tactical displays. His massive dreadnought, pride of conquest, led the pursuit of the insignificant human vessel. Around him, his bridge crew maintained a respectful silence as he composed another message. Pitiful humans, his translated words boomed across all frequencies. Your resistance amuses us. When we display your wreckage across the trade routes, all will learn the price of defying the Empire. Aboard the Defiant, Captain Hayes let the threats wash over her as she studied sensor readings. They're still broadcasting on unencrypted channels, she noted. Chen, are you getting all this? Every word, Captain, Chen replied, her fingers dancing across her console. Their command codes are buried in the transmissions, just like we thought. They're so confident, they're not even using basic encryption. Hayes allowed herself a grim smile. The Empire's arrogance was giving them exactly what they needed, time and information. Send the codes to engineering. Wells, how's our project coming? Better than expected, the chief engineer responded. Their threats are so long-winded, we've managed to recalibrate the entire quantum matrix. Park's team has the stabilizers at 90% efficiency. Another Imperial message cut through their communications. Tizark's voice dripped with condescension. Perhaps we should preserve your ship instead. It would make an excellent teaching tool for our Academy younglings, an example of primitive engineering. Lieutenant Rodriguez snorted from his station. Primitive. They still use particle accelerators for their main weapons. It's like they stopped innovating centuries ago. That's exactly what they did, Hayes confirmed, walking to the tactical display. They've conquered so many species, stolen so much technology, they think they've reached the peak of development. Innovation comes from necessity, and they haven't felt necessary in a long time. The ship shuddered as a glancing hit struck their aft shields. The Imperial fleet had drawn closer, their shots becoming more accurate. They were still playing with their prey, firing just enough to demonstrate their superiority without risking serious damage to their trophy. Shields holding at 62%, Chen reported. They could have hit us harder, but they're deliberately pulling their punches. Hayes keyed the engineering comm. Wells, give me good news. The quantum weapon is ready for testing, Wells replied, exhaustion evident in her voice. But Captain, we've only got one shot at this. The calculations suggest the core will burn out after the first use. One shot is all we need, Hayes said firmly. Status of the backup drives. Installed and primed. If this works, we'll still have enough power to limp home, assuming we survive the weapon's activation. Another message from Tizark filled their communications. Your silence only delays the inevitable. The Empire has conquered 12 species. You will be the 13th. But first, you will provide entertainment for my crew. The Imperial fleet began a new maneuver, their ships moving into an elaborate formation designed more for show than tactical advantage. They were preparing to herd the Defiant into position for their final demonstration of power. "They're so busy showing off, they haven't even noticed our power readings," Rodriguez observed. "The quantum fluctuations are right there in their sensor range." Hayes nodded. "They see them. They just don't recognize them as a threat. After all, what could one primitive human ship possibly do to harm the mighty Empire?" She keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain. The Empire thinks they're about to teach the galaxy a lesson about human weakness. Instead, they're about to learn one about human ingenuity. Secure all stations and prepare for quantum weapon activation." Throughout the ship, crews rushed to secure equipment and prepare for the unknown effects of their experimental weapon. In engineering, Wells and her team made final adjustments to the modified core, their movements precise despite their exhaustion. The Imperial fleet continued their elaborate approach, their formation now resembling a closing fist around the Defiant. Tizark's final message echoed through their speakers. "Your time for games is over, humans. Prepare to become part of Imperial history." Hayes settled into her command chair, her voice steady as she replied to the Imperial Admiral for the first time. "You're right about one thing, Admiral. Someone is about to become part of history." She nodded to Chen at Tactical. "Send the activation codes to engineering. Let's show the Empire why they should have studied human history before they decided to make us angry." The Defiant's modified core began to hum with impossible power as the trap prepared to spring. The Defiant moved like a leaf in a hurricane, each maneuver calculated to appear desperate while serving a greater purpose. Captain Hayes watched as her ship danced through the Imperial formation, every twist and turn positioning their enemies exactly where they needed them. "Quantum core at 93% charge," Wells reported from engineering. "The containment fields are holding, but barely. We're pushing more power through these systems than they were ever meant to handle." On the tactical display, Imperial ships adjusted their positions, following the Defiant's seemingly erratic course. They remained unaware that each movement was drawing them deeper into a carefully orchestrated trap. "Status of the targeted dreadnought?" Hayes asked, her eyes fixed on the massive Imperial command ship. Chen checked her readings, still showing power fluctuations in their port shield grid. "They're trying to compensate, but their systems can't handle the energy variance. It's spreading to nearby vessels through their linked shield network." Perfect. The Empire's preference for network defenses would be their undoing. Hayes had studied their battle tactics extensively. They relied on connecting their ship shields to create an impenetrable wall. But like any wall, it was only as strong as its weakest point. "Time to full weapon charge?" Hayes asked. 7 minutes, Wells responded. "But Captain, the core temperature is reaching critical levels. We're cooling it with every system we've got, but physics has opinions about what we're trying to do here." Another barrage of Imperial fire rocked the ship. This time, the shots came closer, their accuracy improving as the Empire's patience began to wear thin. "Shields at 47%, Rodriguez reported. "They're starting to take this seriously." Hayes nodded. "Good. The more power they put into their attacks, the more energy their shield network has to handle. Lieutenant Chen, target their command ship's power distribution node. Let's give them something else to worry about." The Defiant's main guns roared to life, sending precisely calibrated bursts of energy into the Imperial formation. The shots weren't meant to cause serious damage. Instead, they forced the enemy shields to compensate, creating power surges throughout their network. 5 minutes to weapon charge, Wells called out. "Core temperature still climbing. Park's team is rerouting every spare coolant line we've got." Hayes studied the tactical display, watching as the Imperial ships continued their pursuit. Their formation was almost perfect, a three-dimensional net designed to trap and destroy their prey. They had no way of knowing they were arranging themselves precisely according to the humans' calculations. "Engineering, status of the quantum matrices?" Hayes asked. "Holding stable," Wells replied, her voice strained. "The modifications are working better than we hoped. When this thing goes off, it's going to rewrite the local laws of physics, assuming we survive the activation." Another impact rattled the ship. "Shields at 35%, Rodriguez warned. "We're running out of time, Captain." Hayes keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, secure for quantum weapon activation. This is going to get interesting." Throughout the ship, crew members braced themselves, knowing they were about to attempt something unprecedented in human history. They had turned their FTL core into a weapon that could tear holes in space-time itself. Either they were about to make history, or it would become a cautionary tale about human hubris. 3 minutes to full charge, Wells reported. "Core temperature beyond critical. Containment fields are at maximum." Hayes watched as the final pieces fell into place. The Imperial fleet had arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around the Defiant, their linked shields creating what they thought was an inescapable trap. "Send targeting data to engineering," Hayes ordered. "Match the quantum frequencies to their shield network." Chen's fingers flew across her console. "Data sent. They still haven't detected the weapon's power signature. Their sensors are registering it as core instability." 2 minutes, Wells called out. "Captain, whatever happens, it's been an honor." Hayes allowed herself a small smile. "The honor's been mine, Chief. Now let's show the Empire why they should have studied quantum physics instead of conquest." The Defiant made one final turn, positioning itself at the exact center of the Imperial formation. Around them, 50 warships prepared to close the trap, their massive guns charging for what they thought would be the final blow. They had no way of knowing that the real trap had already sprung. In less than 2 minutes, the Empire would learn the price of underestimating humanity's capacity for innovation, and their willingness to push the boundaries of science itself in defense of the innocent. "Quantum weapon at full charge," Wells announced, her voice steady despite the chaos in engineering. "Core temperature beyond all known safety parameters. It's now or never, Captain." Hayes stood from her command chair, her eyes fixed on the tactical display showing 50 Imperial ships arranged in their perfect, fatal formation. "Target their command ship first. Let's show Admiral Tizark what one primitive human vessel can do." "Weapon locked," Chen confirmed. "Quantum frequencies aligned with their shield network." Hayes took a deep breath. "All hands, brace for weapon activation. Engineering, light it up." The modified FTL core screamed as it released its power. For a brief moment, reality itself seemed to bend around the Defiant. Then, everything changed. The first quantum singularity appeared inside the Imperial command ship's shield envelope. The massive vessel's own defensive field had been turned into a containment system, trapping the artificial black hole within its bounds. Time began to distort around the pride of conquest, decades passing within its hull, while seconds ticked by outside. "Secondary targets locked," Chen called out, her fingers dancing across her console. "Firing solution calculated." More singularities blossomed throughout the Imperial formation. 15 ships found themselves caught in temporal anomalies, their crews experiencing lifetimes in moments. Another 20 vessels discovered their advanced shields were worse than useless. The quantum frequencies turned their defensive screens into amplifiers for the weapon's effects. "By all the stars," Rodriguez whispered, watching his sensor readings. "Their molecular structure is actually breaking down. The quantum effect is tearing them apart at the atomic level." Through the chaos, Tizark's final transmission cut through. What kind of demons are you?" "Not demons," Hayes responded calmly. "Just humans who decided to rewrite physics because you gave us no choice." The pride of conquest began to collapse in on itself, its hull twisting into impossible shapes as space-time warped around it. Throughout the Imperial formation, ships either vanished into temporal voids or broke apart as quantum forces rendered their atomic bonds meaningless. "Core stability at critical," Wells shouted through the comm. "The containment fields are failing." Hayes gripped her chair as the Defiant shuddered violently. "How many ships remaining?" 15 Imperial vessels still combat-capable, Chen reported. They're trying to coordinate a response, but their command structure is in chaos. Send the message, Hayes ordered. Chen nodded, transmitting on all frequencies. Imperial vessels, this is Captain Amanda Hayes of the HSS Defiant. You've just witnessed what one human ship can do when pushed too far. We didn't want this fight, but we won't hesitate to finish it. The remaining Imperial ships began to break formation, their carefully coordinated tactics dissolving into panic. Several vessels attempted to jump to FTL, only to find their engines wouldn't respond, a side effect of the quantum weapons aftermath. Engineering status, Hayes called out. The core is dead, Wells replied, exhaustion evident in her voice. We burned out every system getting that shot off. Backup power holding at 30%. We've got life support and basic maneuvering, but that's about it. Hayes nodded. It was the price they'd expected to pay. Tactical status of the Imperial fleet. 11 ships destroyed or temporarily displaced, Chen reported. 24 severely damaged or atomic compromised. The remaining 15 are combat-capable but showing signs of extreme system deterioration. And the Narration system. Safe, Rodriguez confirmed. The quantum disruption will make this sector impassable to Imperial ships for at least 6 months. By then, Earth's fleet will be here. Hayes allowed herself to relax slightly. They'd done it. One ship had stood against an Imperial fleet and won. The cost had been enormous. The Defiant would never make another FTL jump, but they'd saved billions of lives. Send one final message to the Imperial ships, Hayes ordered. Let them know that humanity stands ready to repeat this demonstration anywhere they threaten innocent lives. As Chen transmitted the message, Hayes watched the surviving Imperial vessels limp away from the battlefield. They'd come expecting to find easy prey, another primitive species to add to their collection. Instead, they'd discovered why humans had survived countless catastrophes on Earth, because they never stopped innovating, never stopped fighting, and never abandoned those who needed protection. All hands, Hayes broadcast shipwide, secure from battle stations. Engineering teams, begin damage assessment. Everyone else, take a moment to appreciate what you've just accomplished. Today, we showed the galaxy that humanity will not stand idle while innocents are threatened. The Defiant drifted amidst the quantum devastation, a small ship that had just changed the course of galactic history. Lieutenant Chen's tactical display showed the remaining Imperial ships regrouping at the edge of the quantum disruption field. The once mighty fleet had been reduced to a scattered collection of damaged vessels, their crews struggling to comprehend what had just happened to them. Captain, Rodriguez called from his station. I'm detecting communications between the surviving ships. They're trying to coordinate a response, but their command structure is in complete disarray. Hayes stood at the center of the bridge, her uniform slightly singed from an overloaded console during the weapons activation. Time to deliver the final piece of our message. Chen, activate the quantum relay beacon. The hidden beacon, positioned precisely where the Defiant had been defending, hummed to life. Its quantum entanglement systems had recorded everything. The battle, the weapons effects, and most importantly, the Empire's complete vulnerability to human innovation. Beacon transmission commencing, Chen confirmed. The data stream is being received by Earth Command. Everything that happened here has been documented and transmitted instantaneously across the galaxy. Hayes keyed the shipwide comm. All hands, prepare for possible hostile action. We may be damaged, but we're not done yet. She turned to communications. Open a channel to the Imperial fleet. The view screen flickered to life, showing the battle-scarred bridge of an Imperial cruiser. A Cathar officer, his scaled skin pale with shock, appeared on screen. This is Sub-Commander Vextel of the Imperial Navy, the alien announced, his translator struggling to maintain composure. You will surrender your vessel for analysis, or face immediate destruction. Hayes smiled, the expression more predatory than friendly. Sub-Commander, I suggest you check your long-range communications. You might find something interesting." On the Imperial ships, alarms began to sound as they detected the quantum transmission. Their sensors registered the impossible, a faster-than-light data burst that had already reached Earth, carrying complete tactical data about their fleet's capabilities and weaknesses. "What? What have you done?" Vextal demanded. "We've changed the game," Hayes replied calmly. "Everything that happened here, every moment of your defeat, has been transmitted to Earth. Our fleet already has the specifications for our quantum weapon. They're probably modifying their ships as we speak." Rodriguez's console beeped urgently. "Captain, detecting power spikes in the Imperial vessels. They're charging weapons." "Let them," Hayes ordered, her voice carrying across the open channel. "But first, Sub-Commander, let me explain exactly what that means for your empire." She stepped closer to the view screen, her presence commanding despite her ship's damaged state. "You didn't just find a single human vessel today. You found humanity's fury. Every ship in Earth's fleet will soon carry the same weapon that just decimated your forces. We'll share this technology with every species you've threatened." The power spikes in the Imperial ships began to fade as the implications sank in. "You're lying," Vextal hissed. "No species would share such power." "That's why you'll never understand us," Hayes responded. "Humans don't hoard knowledge like your empire does. We innovate, we adapt, and most importantly, we share our strength with those who need it." Chen's tactical display updated. "Imperial ships powering down weapons, Captain. They're falling back to minimum safe distance." Hayes nodded. "One final message, Sub-Commander. Take this back to your leaders. Earth stands ready to repeat this demonstration anywhere you threaten innocent lives. We'll arm every species you've targeted. We'll teach them to fight back. The age of Imperial harvest fleets is over." The Imperial officer's scales shifted colors in what might have been fear. The transmission cut off abruptly. "They're retreating," Rodriguez reported. "All surviving Imperial vessels are engaging their FTL drives. Those that still can." Hayes watched as the mighty Imperial fleet fled, leaving behind their twisted wreckage as a testament to humanity's resolve. Status of the quantum beacon's transmission. "Complete," Chen confirmed. "Earth Command acknowledges receipt of all tactical data. They're already dispatching engineering teams to begin modifying the fleet." Hayes settled back into her command chair, feeling the weight of the day's events. They'd done more than save the Narration system. They'd changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Empire had sought to make an example of one human ship. Instead, they'd learned why countless species throughout history had learned to fear the creatures that called Earth home. "Send one final message to Earth Command," Hayes ordered. Tell them the clever apes just rewrote the rules of warfare. And we're just getting started." 6 months later, Captain Amanda Hayes stood before the United Earth Council, her dress uniform adorned with the newly created Imperial Star, a medal specifically designed to commemorate the Defiant's historic stand. Behind her, displayed on massive screens, sensor recordings showed the aftermath of what historians now call the Battle of Narration Space. The quantum weapons effects lasted exactly as predicted, Hayes reported. The disruption field prevented any Imperial ships from entering the sector for 182 days, giving us time to establish proper defenses around Narration Space. Council President Chen leaned forward. And the Narians themselves? How did they react to learning they'd nearly become the 13th species conquered by the Empire? Hayes smiled slightly. They proved remarkably adaptable. Once we established contact, their scientists were particularly interested in our quantum shield technology. They're already helping us improve the design. The council chamber's holographic display shifted, showing the current state of the galaxy. Red markers indicated Imperial territory, significantly less than 6 months ago. Green markers showed newly liberated systems, and blue showed protective cordons established by Earth's growing fleet. The Empire's response? Another counselor asked. Exactly as we predicted, Hayes answered. They attempted to suppress news of their defeat, but we made sure the quantum beacon's transmission reached every corner of their territory. 12 formerly enslaved species are now in open rebellion, using modified versions of our quantum weapon to defend their homes. The display shifted again, showing the Defiant itself. The ship had been retired from active duty, its revolutionary modifications studied and improved upon by Earth's finest engineers. It now served as a training vessel, teaching the next generation of captains how to think beyond conventional tactics. "And what of your crew?" President Chen asked softly. "They've all received commendations," Hayes reported proudly. Chief Engineer Wells is heading the Quantum Weapon Development Program. Lieutenant Chen leads tactical training at the Academy, teaching new officers how to identify enemy vulnerabilities. Rodriguez and Park are working with Narration scientists on improving our defensive capabilities. The council members nodded approvingly. The Defiant's crew had become legends in their own right, their names taught alongside the great innovators of human history. "The Empire's expansion has been completely halted," Hayes continued. "Our intelligence suggests they've lost control of 30% of their territory. More importantly, they'd lost their aura of invincibility. Every species they threaten now knows they can be defeated." The display showed current tactical data. Earth's fleet, now equipped with improved versions of the quantum weapon, patrolled the borders of Imperial space. But they weren't alone. Ships from dozens of species flew alongside them, each contributing their own innovations to the defense of free space. "And the final tally?" President Chen asked. 50 Imperial ships participated in the initial battle, Hayes recited from memory. 11 were destroyed or temporarily displaced. 24 suffered catastrophic damage. The remaining 15 spread word of their defeat throughout Imperial space. One human ship, defending one innocent species, broke the back of an empire that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage, not through conquest or intimidation, but by standing up for those who couldn't defend themselves. The Narians have formally requested membership in the Earth Defense Alliance, Hayes concluded. Their application includes some fascinating proposals for combining their crystal technology with our quantum innovations. They're calling it the Hayes-Chen Principle of Defensive Innovation. President Chen smiled. "Named after you and your tactical officer. How fitting. The humans who proved that creativity and courage could overcome even the greatest odds." Hayes shook her head. "We just did what humans have always done. Faced impossible odds and found a way to overcome them. The real victory isn't in defeating the Empire. It's in showing the galaxy a better way forward. Every species we protect, every innovation we share, every alliance we forge. That's humanity's true strength." The council chamber erupted in applause. Outside, visible through the chamber's massive windows, the Defiant floated in high orbit, its battle-scarred hull a testament to one of the greatest underestimations in galactic history. The Empire had thought they found an easy target. Instead, they'd awakened humanity's most powerful instincts: the drive to protect the innocent, the desire to share knowledge, and the absolute refusal to submit to tyranny. They had made what the galaxy now universally acknowledged as the greatest mistake in Imperial history, and humanity was just getting started.